It's time. Neuvillette is now a fully fledged dragon sovereign. And now that his power has just been returned to him in full, he has some individuals in his sights, and he's not mincing words about who they are.
That being said, my grievances with the usurpers have yet to be settled. They owe a debt of blood that shall not be forgotten.
Now that he has the ability to reclaim his brethren's stolen power and judge the usurpers, he will do so. In a couple hundred years. Aside from how trolly that was, his hit list includes the gods on land and up above, and he even alludes to the fact that this may involve fighting them.
Nothing will stop me from rendering judgment on each of the seven. As the Archon who won the authority of Geo, Deus Ori must be called to trial. If one does not wish to see us on opposite sides of a conflict, they need not worry, for I intend to stay in Fontaine for the foreseeable future, which could well mean another 400 years. As another point of consolation, even when the trial eventually takes place, it is still not a given that the judgment will lead to a physical confrontation.
However, while he believes he's strong enough to judge them all, is he actually? Just how strong is a dragon sovereign in comparison to the gods of Teyvat? And in the end, can he truly reach for the stars and judge even the one above? I mean, I'm just going to answer the final question first because the answer is the most simple, and the answer is no. Moving along, buddies. Dude, weakened or not, the Dragon King souped up on forbidden knowledge. I mean, this is like crack to these guys. Souped up on forbidden knowledge, couldn't take down the heavenly principles, and that's with the other sovereigns backing him. One itty-witty-wittable sovereign of water is going to get sent straight to the Shadow Realm as soon as he knocks on Celestia's door trying to serve them papers. Nibelung was a cut above the rest of the sovereigns. He left the world, came back with forbidden knowledge, and still led the rest of the sovereigns in a fight. Need I remind you, we had a whole story quest dedicated to saving a regular old sovereign who ate like a human's worth of secondhand forbidden knowledge and was just like... So yeah, he's not judging the heavenly principles, but how does Neuvillette match up against the Archons of Teyvat? Aside from naturally being strong due to them being gods, the Archons draw their power from three other major sources. The first is through ruling their nation, the second is through the people's faith, and the third are through their gnosis. Also, every time I say gnosis, there's always like 3 people commenting it. Guys, I'm saying gnosis, but in plural form. That's what you're supposed to do, right? Just add some S's, gnosis, gnosises. Only when all 3 of these criteria are met are the Archons at their strongest. So, with that said, right off the bat, we can eliminate Venti and Nahida. Venti once proudly stated he's the weakest of the Archons. This is due to him choosing not to rule over Mondstadt, and as a result, the people's faith in him is pretty much all but vanished. Even amongst his own church, people don't actually think he existed. Nahida's story, on the other hand, is a bit more complicated. Officially, Nahida lost a lot of her power during the Cataclysm, and as a result wound up imprisoned by the sages after losing her memory. In actuality, however, Nahida never ruled her nation, as after the death of Greater Lord Brukodevata, Nahida was imprisoned shortly after her birth. In any case, the end result remained, due to a lack of ruling and the non-existent people's faith in her, albeit for more malicious reasons than Venti, Nahida is also fairly weak by comparison. Also, none of them have their gnosises anymore, which is also another fairly... See, I can't even say the word anymore, man, because I know someone's gonna fucking... It's been fucking ruined, man. Anyway, none of them have their gnosises anymore, which is a fairly big power boost, is the point I tried to make. So, they're fairly weak, and it stands to reason that these two would get skibbity-boo-bopped by Neuvillette should they skip out on courts. On the other hand, Raiden A recused herself from the duties of the shogunate long ago, and in turn had the shogun do it. She was tucked away in the plane of Euthymia, unaware and uncaring of what was going on in the real world. It wasn't until the end of the Archon quest that she decided to take a more hands-on approach, and as such it stands to reason A gained no power through ruling over her people, but still gained power due to the people's faith in her. It's not like they didn't believe she existed, she was technically present everywhere. Regardless, A is still a mighty god because she did defeat the shogun after fighting it for 500 years straight, and all she really did for the last 500 years was just like sit in this Indian position, not really training or doing anything, while the shogun was just like taking little statues. It's worth noting she did give up her gnosis hundreds of years ago after she discarded her physical body. I'm not really sure what to make of A. On the other hand, she did kill the god Orobashi with such force it literally split the land in two, but on the flip, this exact same sword technique was somehow blocked by the human Kazuha. So, I mean, either Kazuha with 2 visions is so strong he can block a sword strike that killed a god and birthed a Grand Canyon, or there is some wildly inconsistent writing going on here. I mean, logic aside, it made for a 16 though, so fuck it. However, I cannot overlook this indiscretion and believe Neuvillette should squarely beat A should she resist summon. Now finally, we have Big Daddy. Until pretty recently, Zhongli had all 3, man. He ruled over Liyue, he had the people's faith, and he had his gnosis. There's a reason why in all the voice lines, Neuvillette only mentions the possibility of a physical conflict with the Longzhong himself. So how does Zhongli stack up in a fight against Neuvillette? Morax has fought and slain countless other gods and beings, including but not limited to Osiel, Bachi, Zhao's former master, Qi, Ajdaha, and more. I mean, there's a reason one of his nicknames is the Warrior God. While it's still up in the air as to whether or not Ajdaha was a sovereign, it's worth noting a couple of things about the fight between the two. Even if he was a sovereign, he was not at full strength due to the power that was stolen from him by the heavenly principles when fighting Morax. As such, if Ajdaha was a sovereign, he was not at full strength, and even Zhongli himself stated the original fight was extremely hard, and despite his victory, he cannot say who is stronger between the two of them. This fight should have occurred when Morax was at his strongest. Liyue had already been established, he was ruling over them, he had their faith, and he had the gnosis. And yet it was still a hard-fought victory against someone who either wasn't a sovereign or was a sovereign that is weakened. So, those are Zhongli's battle accolades. Now what are Neuvillette's? Well, Neuvillettes is the first fully fledged dragon sovereign Teyvat has seen in thousands of years. The noteworthy battle the sovereigns have ever been in, they lost, but you know, it was versus the strongest being in Teyvat and the 4 Shades, so I think we can cut them some slack. A sovereign is the strongest dragon of their respective element, so in this case, Neuvillette is the strongest wielder of Hydro lore-wise due to him currently having authority over it. His only real highlight thus far has been helping to defeat the all-devouring Narwhal, which is a beast from beyond the stars, making its power level tough to determine, but it was drinking the primordial sea and seemingly has the ability to travel between different worlds, so it must be tough. But to the flip side of that coin, he is a pet of a Teyvatian. Teyvatian? Yeah, Teyvatian. I mean, look, this whole fight is tough to say, but overall, gun to my head, who do I think wins right now? Neuvillette or Zhongli? I mean, probably Neuvillette. I mean, look, when Zhongli gave up the gnosis, he said it himself, he lost a good amount of power, and with him now being retired, he continues to lose even more power as time goes on, to which he alluded to was an intentional thing. He reasoned that erosion takes its worst form when there's immense power at play, which is part of why he thought it necessary to step down. He's a ways away from being at his peak, and with each passing day it slips further and further away. Neuvillette is at the strongest he's ever been right now that he's a full sovereign, and his authority is really all he needs to be at his peak. He doesn't need faith nor a gnosis. So, at this present time, I do believe Neuvillette is the strongest playable character lore-wise. Until my baby Kiana becomes playable, in which case she dog walks that fucker back to